moving on. Next one is Bobby. He says, why is branding so important for local SEO? And can you talk about how to improve brand authority? Yeah, that's another good question. So why is branding so important for local SEO? Because Google recognizes and rewards entities now, and in part it's a way to eliminate spam, right? Or at least reduce spam. We as SEOs, we know how to still build authority to pseudo brands and all of that. But for the average person, Google rewards brands and established entities. And I've talked a lot about what I call expanding the entity footprint or informing the knowledge graph, which is a term that I learned from Jason Bernard from Calicube Pro. But essentially, branding is important for the semantic web because it's a way to establish and build authority to a local entity, to an entity in period. But we're talking in context of local SEO. Okay, so establishing a brand or an entity and then building authority to that makes all other SEO efforts easier, right? It's easier to get results with SEO if you have a brand that is well recognized by Google. So establishing and building strength or authority to a local entity. Well, how do you do that? One of the ways that you do that, and I've talked about this for years now, is by expanding the entity footprint, which is going out and helping engineer the knowledge graph for Google, and then not just building the knowledge graph, but assisting with discoverability, which means, I use this example all the time. Some of you, I'm sure, have heard me say this, but it's like a knowledge graph is like a jigsaw puzzle in that if you buy a jigsaw puzzle brand new in a box and you dump it out on a table, it looks to be random, odd-shaped pieces and everything else. But you know that when you organize them properly and assemble them the right way, it creates an image, a picture. And the more pieces that you assemble properly and put together in the appropriate order, the clearer or sharper that image becomes. Does that make sense? It's very much like that with a knowledge graph for a local entity or any entity, but we're talking in local SEO context here. So when a brand first establishes itself and verifies a Google business profile, which is an entity validator, it's very little. Google has a little bit of an idea of what this entity is, and it might have little bits of scattered data on the web that corroborate or validate that information, that entity information, right? But so how can we improve that? How can we add nodes to the knowledge graph so that Google can form a sharper or clearer image of the local entity? Well, building branded profiles or building a branded presence on as many different websites around the web as possible, especially those that are relevant, right? But not just building a presence, because again, that is leaving it up to Google to find it somewhere on the web and associate it with the entity. So I always talk about 3 levers that we should be pulling to optimize for the semantic web. Number 1 is entity association. Number 2 is relevance. Number 3 is corroboration, data validation. I just talked about associating the entities, and I talked about relevant sources, and I talked about corroborating data, right? So by expanding the entity footprint, we're actually pulling all 3 levers there, right? Because we are associating entities, meaning it's the local entity, but on all these different properties out there, which are entities in and of themselves, right? So we're associating entities, and then we're also telling Google, hey, this is us, this entity on these other platforms, especially when they're relevant platforms. That makes it more valuable, more powerful. And then number 3, corroboration, we can reinforce the local entity information, name, address, phone number, website, hours of operation, details about the products and services the business provides, the service areas or the locations that it services, et cetera. We can corroborate data across those assets and then interlink them and place them in strategic places to assist with discoverability. That means, I hammer away at this all the time. Google business website. It's a Google property. The Google business website, when used properly, is incredibly powerful. When not used properly, which most people don't, it really has no benefit at all, which is why I see a lot of SEOs that come into our ecosystem that don't publish Google business websites because they probably don't feel that they're providing any value. But a Google business website is a Google property. So if you have well-developed content in the main content area of the GB website, and then you link out with contextual links to especially branded assets, not so much supporting assets, but branded assets, the Google bot's going to come crawl it, and they're going to discover those links and crawl those links. Whether they index them or not doesn't really matter. What matters is that they are crawled. And from a Google business website, the links will be crawled. Same thing with Google Posts, Google Business Posts. If you use the CTA button, the Learn More button, to link out to branded and or supporting assets, as well as additional product and service pages on the money site, now you've got, again, Googlebot's going to crawl it. Whether it indexes or not, another story. It's still going to crawl it. Okay. Same as attributes and schema. If you're doing structured data, local business schema, same as attributes, you reference URLs there. They're not hyperlinks, but they're reference points that the Googlebot reads and will go read that link and understand, okay, again, it's about assisting with discoverability. Another one, G Site, Google Sites, Google Property, taking a G Sheet, putting all of your links in the G Sheet and then publishing the G Sheet, embedding that in the ID page, for example. Those are all ways to assist with discoverability, to expand the entity footprint, help engineer or inform the knowledge graph, right? Form a sharper image of the local entity in Google. And so, again, it's so very important to do that. And Syndication Academy, actually, we've had Syndication Academy since, I think, 2014 was when we launched it. I believe it was 2014. Yeah, it was 2014. And it used to be that we would build out the branded assets and interlink them and all of that. This was pre-semantic web era. Then we would use IFTTT to trigger syndication from RSS feeds from the money site, the blog, or YouTube, or both, that then would cascade or syndicate out across the branded network profiles from the syndication network. And that was what I did for SEO for like 3 years. That was all I did. I swear to God. And I crushed it for several years with my agency, doing nothing other than that. No kidding. It's not so much the case anymore. But why Syndication Academy is still valuable is because we teach how to expand the entity footprint, how to find these properties, especially properties that are particularly powerful, how to set up a profile, optimize them, interlink them when possible. And we do that twice a month. Essie does anyways, which is our trainer at Syndication Academy. So can you talk about how to improve brand authority? Yes, expand the entity footprint and then build relevance to those assets and help with discoverability, as I just described. Google Business Website, ID page, same as attributes, Google Business Post, G Site, G Sheets, all of those things to assist with discoverability. And then again, as you continue to expand your entity footprint, building links to those assets, not any kind of link, relevant links, topic and or geographic relevance, if that makes sense. That's how you push authority and make those more valuable.